That's always what you want to see. I'm just going to turn this one off, I think.
You're live.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Casey.
And Coach Tom.
And this is Shot Science Overtime number 207.
Yeah, boy. We've been away for a little bit, but we're back.
Yeah, well, we've been working on putting together the studio space, kind of getting together some of our ideas and revamping. And we will be back doing our tutorials and everything as soon as we possibly can. But we wanted to make sure that we touch base with you guys and do some live show stuff just so that you don't forget about us completely.
Exactly.
And just know that we are working on a whole new round of stuff. So we've kind of been away for a little bit, but we're ready to kind of revamp and get things going. So hopefully people will show up for this live show so that we can get some conversation going. Let me get out of this thing. Let's see. Always a little bit of technical stuff right off the bat. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to do what we normally do for... Hey, there's Den V Star. What's up? Hello, coaches. And then we got Josh Harris saying hello. Martin Nanov saying I play football, European football, and I recommend anyone under 6 foot to switch his back. Well, we don't want to put that out into the universe.
Yeah.
But Debbie started saying, hope you're doing well. It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while, but we just been getting things together and organized, and it's hard when you got other life stuff going on too. But we are almost ready to get things going here and put some new tutorial content out and some other stuff too that is beyond tutorial stuff, but obviously very basketball specific. But we're going to do our regular live show format stuff today where we give you guys a topic that we talk about. I should have gone back and watched one of our old live shows because I forget all the stuff that we're supposed to do. But we're going to give you a topic that we're going to talk about. Something that we think is going to help you guys in developing your game, maybe cut some of the learning curve out. And while we're doing that, you guys are going to send us all your basketball-related questions that you have.
Right.
So if you want to know anything about shooting, passing, dribbling, defense, how to jump higher, athleticism, and I forgot my whole list that I have, and I got to go back and listen to that one too. Send those questions to us, and also go out and tell your friends and family to jump in and start the conversation with us too, because that helps us grow and get more interest, and then we're going to be doing more things. So hopefully we can start adding more people to Team Shot Science again. And make sure you guys check out shotscience.com where we have all of our shirts and hats and all that stuff. If you want some of that stuff, you can check that out there. And we have other cool things going on there. And make sure you follow us on all our social media stuff, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. That's the, getting the business out of the way. And also, we have a few questions for you guys, too, that we're going to ask, but not right this second.
Right.
But we'll ask that after we talk about our topic. How about that?
Oh, okay,
we'll give people a little bit of time to show up.
Yep.
So ask your questions now. It will help us get through as many as we possibly can, because if you have yours at the end, it's hard for us to get to all those questions, okay? Right. So let's just jump into our question for today, or our topic for today, which is the number one method to get the ball in your hands, because people always want to know, how do I get more touches to the basketball? How do I get more opportunities to score? How do I get just the ball in my hands more than what I'm getting? Because most people, they feel like they don't have it in their hands enough, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
So what are some of the reasons why people might not get the ball as much as they think they should?
Well, one of the reasons, I'm going to throw one out here that you probably don't think of it very much, but it's really important, and that is oftentimes your teammates don't trust you. Yeah. Maybe the coach trusts you, but your teammates don't. And so oftentimes they will play around you and not involve you in what's going on in the game because they're afraid you're going to take and turn the ball over. And so,
and also they can be afraid that you're going to not give the opportunity to the best person for that specific chance to score.
Exactly right.
So,
exactly
like maybe you've held the ball and there was somebody that was in a better spot to score and you didn't get them the ball. That's a great way to not have trust.
Yeah. And the thing is that oftentimes when we're playing with individuals on teams where, that's not the strongest team, and there's maybe one or two people who are just kind of out there and doing the best they can, is that as soon as those players realize that you're going to turn the ball over or not be able to score, they're going to be less apt to throw you the ball. And, it's kind of funny is we have some girls players that are post players that I think are going to be really good. but they're playing in a situation where the other teammates do not share the ball with them. And not even watching them play, I know exactly what the problem is, and that is they don't trust them. And part of the not trusting is the fact that maybe you're not moving very much, you're not giving them a target. One of the things that I talk about this all the time with players that we're training and working with, is that when you're playing in the middle of the defense, if you don't take and get your hands up, the people who are on the perimeter have exceptionally bad eyesight, and they don't see you.
Yeah, especially when you're in kind of the lower or younger levels of basketball.
Exactly. And what happens is that if they don't see you, they're not going to give you the basketball. If they don't trust you, they're not going to give you the basketball.
And the other thing is that if you don't deserve the basketball, they're not going to get it to you. So if you're just standing there with your hands up, you haven't created space. You're not helping in creating opportunities for other people that are on the team.
Right.
If you're basically just a
body,
post that's just standing there, that is not going to endear anybody to want to give you the ball to create an opportunity to score. And frankly, it's not going to give you the best opportunity to score, period, because that just means that you're catching the ball and now you're going one-on-one face up to this defender, where you could have been doing the work before you even get the ball to create an opportunity to get to the basket or take a shot, where that guy is going to be more or less neutralized.
Very true. Very true.
So one of the prescriptions that we would put out there is the number one method for us is to move without the basketball. And like we were saying before, in the lower levels or younger levels of basketball, you see so many people that are just standing there, unless they have like a play set up that somebody, the coach has set up or whatever. Most players, they just stand around, or maybe they do one thing every single time. They keep doing the same thing. That's not going to get you open. That's not going to endear or compel somebody to get you the basketball. You really need to be moving constantly, and there's things you should be doing. You shouldn't just be running around and noodling around in the middle of the court or whatever. There's specific things that you can do that create opportunities for you, but they also make it tough for the defense to keep track of you. They also make it tough for the defender of your teammates to be able to stay on their teammate or to be on their person that they're guarding. So we're going to run through a list of some of those things right now. But
before we do that, Casey, one of the things I want to kind of throw out there is that the more movement that you have as a player that is within the scheme of what your coach wants you to do, the more effective it's going to be, because what happens is that you force the defense to make constant changes in how they're guarding you, and oftentimes players that are not very good on defense or they have bad habits, they can't keep track of you. And so by having these movement patterns, and we're going to talk about those in just a couple of minutes, you're going to find that you probably get open for the basketball a lot more when you are moving.
Yeah.
Let's talk first of all about you're being pressured, let's say at the wing.
Well, hold on. Let's talk about one other thing too, and that is the fact that you want to become the defense's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
If you're just standing there, you are like literally giving them the greatest gift you can in terms of them playing defense, because they don't have to do anything. They can literally just stand there or help their teammates and watch what's going on without worrying a single second about what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you want to make life tough on them, you move. You give them things that they aren't expecting. They keep them on their toes. And one of the things that we are always talking about at Shot Science is the fact that you want to be proactive, not reactive.
Yes.
And so you want to be the one that's making the move and making them react to you, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to, keep them guessing, where maybe you're going to do this, and then the next time down the court you do this, or you mix it up. But they're always wondering, what is that guy going to do? I can't keep track of what. And when you start doing that, you will start to see that you will be more in control of the entire situation. Right. So let's talk about the methods.
All right. Well, one of the things that is kind of unique about basketball is that many offenses start their offense on the offensive end by delivering the ball to a person who is playing at the wing. And the wing position, we usually identify that as a space that is just beyond the 3 line, and it's on a par or a level with the free throw line extended. That's kind of a place to be. But what happens is if we get there and we're standing there waiting for stuff to happen, and they try to throw us the ball, and the defense is pressuring us a little bit, a couple of things happen. Number one, the defense, because they're pressuring, forces us to step further away from that location. The further we step away from that location, the further we get from the basket. And so that takes away the possibility of maybe having a pretty good 3 look. And so one of the things that's real important is this, is that we need to create leads by, and we can do this several ways, by moving our defensive player. If you go, if let's say from that high wing position, if you make a hard move toward the block on the lane, just making a hard move there, it looks like probably you're going to take and go under the basket to the other side. They're going to be right with you.
Yep.
And what we teach our players is this: make a hard move toward that block, and then when you get down there, take the foot that is closest to that person and step in front of them. You actually just cross your feet and step in front of them, and now they're behind you. And then you break back out and you catch the ball as you're coming out. If you've got a pretty good point guard, or it doesn't have to be a point guard, but let's say one of the guards can throw you the ball, and you're going to catch it out here away from that defender, and it's really difficult for them to do much about it. And once we've got the ball, then we can face up, and if we've got something that we can do, maybe we could attack them off the dribble, maybe we're going to be open for a shot, or at least maybe we're going to pass the ball inside. There's things to do, but we call that a V-cut, and that's pretty common in basketball for people to be taught how to execute a V-cut.
And it's not just running down and running out.
No.
There's footwork involved. There's changes in speed and direction. And you are trying, again, to be proactive and make the defense have to react to you.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, too, is that I don't see an awful lot of on the high school level anyway, I don't see an awful lot of players who execute that V move.
A lot of times they'll take one little step or they'll duck in or down. That's not a V cut.
You've got to get deep enough and hard enough that it looks like you're going under the bucket, and then you step across and you flash back out, and then you put them in a situation where they're not going to be able to probably get to the basketball. And that's important.
And one of the other things that you see a lot too, especially in high school and lower leagues and stuff, is that you'll see people that struggle to get open, and they're kind of doing the jukey thing all around. Yeah. They're taking a step and a jab step and trying to get up. That kind of stuff, it may work occasionally, but if you have a good defender on you, that stuff doesn't work like that. Yeah. So that's why you need to develop things like the V cut, and we're going to talk about the L cut, which is another one where you walk down to the post or the peg, and then you bust out up towards the top of the key, which is a similar thing. And you might find yourself right in the middle of the defense with a wide open look because you basically have penetrated the middle and they dump the pass into you.
Right.
And then the other one that we also have is like the back cut.
The back cut, yeah.
Because eventually they'll start to this happens two ways. They'll either start to preempt what you're doing when you do things like the L cut and the V cut, and you can eventually just run through. Yeah. And then they'll be left thinking, oh, I thought they were going to do the L cut, and you just run through, and then they can get you the ball right there by the basket. Right. Or if they lose track of you. A lot of times you see this all the time. They lose track of you. Maybe they're trying to follow what's going on with the ball up at the top of the key. You just run a back door, and they almost don't even see it until the ball is in your hands. Right. And so that's another one to check out. And you can see all of those moves in our videos that we've done in the past, and in our series, Moving Without the Ball. And we demonstrate those things. And those are literally the 3 most effective ways to get the ball in your hands with such minimal effort. It's silly, and most people don't even do it until they're more and more advanced. Right. And if you get somebody with a backdoor cut, it will make your day, I swear, because you basically totally fooled them, and it's a layup. It's like doing a layup drill. Yeah. So that is one that I think you definitely need to have in your utility belt for sure. Right.
One of the other things that kind of comes along with this too is that if you have, let's say you have the basketball and you're receiving a screen, that is another way for you to execute getting away from your defensive player. Maybe you force them into a switch, or they get confused and one of them tries to go over the top and they don't make that switch, and you're running loose to the back.
I mean, setting screens, receiving screens, those are other ways of moving without and with the ball. Right. Even if you are the one with the ball in your hands, someone sets a screen for you, give and go, or a little screen. I mean, screen and roll is another good one. Another one is the give and go. You basically give up the ball to get it back, but you keep moving after you've given up the ball to get it back. And again, the defense is trying to keep up with you because you are proactively moving without the basketball.
Right.
Another one is, dumping the ball into the post, right? You dump the ball in the post. Mm-hmm. You don't have the ball in your hands now, so what do? You got to move without the ball. So relocate. They'll get it back to you. You get a shot.
Let's take just a moment and talk about relocation, Casey.
Okay.
A lot of players don't really know about this particular technique. Sometimes the coaches will tell you about it. Sometimes they don't emphasize it enough. One of the things that happens is that when we throw the ball to the middle, and it can be at a low post, it can be at a high post or whatever, one of the things that happens is that your defensive player wants to see where the ball is gone, and oftentimes they'll look away from you, and they may even try to go down and double team the post. And one of the things that you want to remember is this: if they turn to the side and are looking, you are going to take and relocate your position opposite from the direction they turn. So if I'm out on the left wing and I turn my head to the right here, then you're going to go to the corner that is down below on that same side.
Yeah.
And what happens there is they lose you, and then the ball can be thrown out to you, and maybe you get a 3 look, maybe you just get a good look at the basket. Okay, so relocation is really important for you when you are throwing the ball actually into the middle more often than it does around the perimeter.
Yeah, and a lot of times people don't even throw the ball into the post because they haven't figured that out. But a lot of times if you see people throw the ball into the post, they just stand there.
Yeah.
And they're either expecting the ball to come back to them, or they're expecting that guy to do some move and the play to be over. If you relocate, you will find so often that you will get the ball back wide open because your defender will usually collapse onto the ball handler. And so then if you just move away, you've created that space, you'll get the ball back, you'll have an open shot.
Right.
It's really so simple. And the other thing too is there's so many ways to move without the ball. And those are probably the major ways. And there's other ways too, but watch people like Steph Curry. He's the best really at moving without the ball. Klay Thompson still too.
Right.
Who are some of these other guys? I mean,
well, most of them who play on the better teams in the NBA, usually these days, movement and motion offenses are really the style of the day.
Or Manu Ginobili. I mean,
they really require that players really execute a lot of moves, and they're working off screens. And one of the things that we don't think about enough is that when you are doing that, you want to work on changing speeds.
Yep.
And if you watch Curry and Thompson and the players on their team, you'll see them, they'll take and bump somebody that maybe is guarding them, and then they kind of head off to the opposite side of the floor, and they're not going very hard. And then all of a sudden, there's a screener on him, and he's making a hard curl back to the basket and often gets a really good shot. So important things to remember is a lot of movement creates real problems for the defense in a lot of ways. And to be very honest with you, there probably are not that many coaches who are really into that method of play today, on the high school level anyway. But that's probably going to change now as we go along, because you can see that the pros are having a lot of success with that. And you can see that the NBA is really swinging in that direction. And I think a lot of it has to do with just the influence of San Antonio and also the Warriors. Coaches, the coach that coached at Oakland and then went to the Lakers. What's his name?
Luke Walton.
Walton. He kind of took and adopted a lot of that stuff that he had at Oakland with the Warriors and put it in with the Lakers. And now he's probably going to do exactly the same thing since I think he's at Sacramento now, isn't that right? Yeah.
And
So the obvious thing that we want to remember is that that defensive players oftentimes will lose you when there's a lot of movement, and your coaches are going to dictate really what they want you to do with regard to movement. If you're fortunate enough to play with a coach who likes a lot of movement, like some coaches will use what they call a 5-out offense, where you're playing pretty much without a post, but there are people who are in and out of the post on most everything, but there's a lot of movement from side to side, and what happens is that defensive players cannot keep track of the players because of a lot of things that are happening. They're setting screens, there are people who are making back cuts. A lot of that kind of thing can be really effective for you as a player if your coach is into that whole thing. I can go back probably 40 or 50 years and remember when I was a young guy coaching, and most offenses on the high school level were terminal plays. You ran this particular motion for one person to get a shot, and then you ran another one for another person to get a shot. And that's not the way it is so much anymore, because I think players are better. I think coaching is better. And they're accepting a lot of principles that weren't so obvious back in the day.
Yeah. Okay. So do we feel good about that?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
we really want to make sure that you guys understand that moving without the basketball is literally one of the best things that you can get together for yourself in terms of becoming a good basketball player.
Exactly.
And we usually don't see it when people are younger. Like they literally stand there until the ball's in their hands, and then it's a one-on-one situation. Learn how to move without the ball. It will make life so much easier for you.
Yeah.
And you can check out those methods in our YouTube videos that we put out in the past, where it's the moving without the ball series. It might even be in the playlist below this video, or you can just type in shot science, L cut, V cut, or back cut, or whatever, and it should all show up.
Yeah.
And we probably will have more on that at some point too.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to stop our topic right now. If you guys want to ask more questions about it, go ahead, and we will get into more of that. But also, we want to tell you guys to please send in all your questions. It looks like we could do with a few more today. So please send in those questions. Please tell your friends and family to check us out if they're into basketball stuff. We would love to go and answer as many questions as we possibly can today. Sure. But before we get into that, we want to ask you guys our question of the day. We try to ask this every single time that we have a live show. And that question is this.
Where are you located in the world?
Yeah.
Tell us where you are from. Are you from Australia? Are you from the Philippines? Where are you from? We'd like to know.
Yeah. Are you from
Lithuania?
Lithuania is the old go-to.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to know where you guys are from. We are in Santa Cruz, California. We are on the coast south of San Francisco, but we want to know where in the world you guys are from.
Yeah.
And I know that we have a lot of frequent viewers here, but we still like to remember where you guys are all from too.
Absolutely.
So let us know where you are, and we'll try to shout out as many people as we can about the places that they're from and who they are. I don't even know. Is that Lithuania?
It's just a different spelling, and then LOL, huh?
Is that the phonetic spelling?
I guess so.
Andre Sims.
All right.
Yeah, so let us know where you guys are from. I know Zeno said up here that he says greetings from Amsterdam, but we want to know where you guys are from. I know Denvi Star is from, I believe, Moscow, right?
I think you're right, Casey. It's been a while, but I think you're right.
Okay, so send us those questions in, and also make sure you guys check out All Things Shot Science. That really helps us.
Yeah.
And let's start getting into some of these questions. Please send more questions, because we need as many as we possibly can today. Anything basketball related.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Zeno says the number one method, be a point guard. I mean, that has changed a lot. Point guards are not exactly kind of the archetypical point guards that they used to be in past decades.
That's really true, especially on the pro level and maybe even in the college level. Oftentimes you will see in the more up-to-date offenses in the NBA, you'll find that there's a post out there and he's playing the point guard. And sometimes you'll find a wing out there and he's playing the point guard. And the other, the point guard and maybe another guard are involved in some kind of motion to get open for a look for the shot. So that
Well, I mean, and some of it too comes down to like even our philosophy is that there should be no position players. You
Right.
should really become an all-around versatile player. There obviously was a long period of time where people basically got pigeonholed. Oh, you're 6'8". You're
Yep.
definitely playing the center on this high school basketball team.
Right.
Oh, you're 5'4". You're definitely the point guard.
Yep.
And whatever the various breakdowns would be, mostly on height and build and athleticism and things like that. And these days, that isn't really the case. You could have a guy that's 6'9" or 6'11", and they're playing the point guard.
Right.
Even if you were on the shorter side, that doesn't necessarily pigeonhole you just as a point guard. And even if you are a point guard, you should be able to do all the things that a post player does, because that only makes you more efficient, more deadly, more difficult to guard. The same goes for post players being able to play the perimeter.
Right.
If you can do both, then it's that much harder. So
Right.
don't focus on just being a post player. Like, be an every player.
Yeah, be a basketball player.
Yeah. And so, kind of the normative positions of being the point guard and always having the ball and being the distributor, like that stuff is really kind of starting to go away.
Particularly on the pro level. But
But anywhere.
you see it more in college too these days. I still see high school not being quite so creative. It takes
Yeah.
time to learn how to play like that too.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's the coaches that are more resistant to changes and evolution than the players.
Yeah, very true.
So,
Very true.
Let's see. Dimvisar says, I have a question about shooting form. How do I make the ball come off my index finger when shooting? It usually is my ring finger that lets the ball go, and it affects my shot in a bad way.
Okay. I'm glad you asked that question, because it's a common problem for a lot of people when they're shooting the basketball. And so one of the things is we always, in fact, let me just back up for a second here. Casey's going to show you the basketball. And what we talk about is that we want to take and have a picture in our mind. The back of the basketball is going to look like a clock face, okay? And we want fingers 1 and 2 to be pointed toward 12 o'clock. When you start allowing the hand to rotate one way or the other, you find that it's going to come off of different fingers. If the elbow wants to fly out and away as you shoot, it's going to come off of those 3 fingers, and you're not going to be very accurate. If you take and allow the wrist to what we call pronate to the outside, you can see where the ball is going to go, and you can see that my 2 index and second finger, that they are going to be not going toward 12 o'clock. They're going somewhere out on the side court. And so what you really want to do is make sure that those 2 fingers right there, dip right in the middle of the hoop every time you shoot it. And you'll find that probably will help. The index finger is not the only release finger. We like to see it come off of both of these fingers. The second finger is a little bit longer, gives us a little bit of control there. The other thing that probably is really important maybe as those fingers is, what are you doing with the thumb on the shooting hand?
Well, you're flying through this a little bit fast, but here's the other thing. Like, when we have these 2 finger contacts, it's going to create a lot more stability and control than just having it come off one. I know a lot of people say, off of that index finger, flick the finger, all that stuff. I don't think that is the best teaching method.
No.
You really wanted to come off these 2 because, look, I have so much more stability and control, and so I can, be much more precise about where the ball goes, as opposed to when I try to do it with 1, it goes everywhere. And so it's like, even if it's off a millimeter here, that is only amplified by the time it gets to the basket. So having that second finger contact come off, that's only going to create more stability for the ball.
Right. And the thing that's kind of important in all of this too is that you have to develop those habits.
Yep.
And the habits that we're talking about is that you have a release that is the same every time you shoot it.
Yep.
All great shooters have exactly the same release every time they shoot the ball. And they've developed that over a period of time and find that it's going to be very effective for them. And so that's really important, maybe as important as anything that we've talked about. is just making sure that you make the mechanics work the way they should work. And if we're letting the elbow roll out when we shoot, then we're going to be probably releasing the ball off of those fingers. And the ball, I'll tell you another thing that's going to happen there is that the shot is probably going to be flat. Now, can I make a flat shot? You can make a flat shot, but not very often. It's the same kind of thing is that if we're shooting a ball with a nice arc, then what happens is that we're going to have a bigger target that we're shooting to, and that's going to help us too.
Yeah, and when it comes down to doing anything where you're trying to fix some element of your shot or the mechanics, you need to always remember that nothing just happens. You need to spend the time purposely working on it. So do something like the form shooting drill where you're breaking things down to kind of the bare bones of everything that you're doing and really focus on that one thing. If you're having trouble getting the ball coming off the right fingers, you need to really focus in on that. And that doesn't mean that you go out and you do a shoot around and you shoot a bunch of 3-pointers and whatever. That's not going to change it. Even if you're thinking about, I'm going to get out. That's not being purposeful. You need to get in there, do the form shooting, get in close, really work on getting that down so that every time you do it, it consistently comes off of those fingers. And you have to not only tell yourself in your mind, but you have to put it into your muscle memory and your fingers, get the repetitions, and then it will work for you.
And if you don't keep your mind focused on that, you'll go right back to what you were doing before.
Yeah.
And, that's a conversation that I had with a young student yesterday. It was a young girl, and we got her to the point where the wrist was coming right through, coming off the first two fingers. And then I didn't say anything for a couple of shots at all. And immediately it goes back to that pronation again, and the shot starts to go kind of wonky.
Well, and a lot of people, I don't know if this is just a difference between people in general, but a lot of people, they just expect for there to be some easy way to fix it, or just if they say it out loud that it will be done and fixed. You have to go in there and you have to work at it. It's just like if you're trying to learn some kind of musical instrument, it's not like if you just pick it up and say, I want to play this, like it will suddenly happen. Like you have to spend all that hard time woodshedding it, and it might sound like garbage for a period of time, but eventually you're going to get it down if you're working on it purposely. You're thinking about it, you're building up the muscle memory. But a lot of people don't seem to have that inside of them, at least not maybe initially. But if you are going into it and you have a goal to set, like that's really what you want to do. Purposeful practice, consistent purposeful practice.
Well, there's another element in there that maybe we ought to take and emphasize too, and this is an important element. When you are learning to shoot, we have our players start off oftentimes with just a one-handed shot, and if we don't execute the shot properly, what happens is that we can't control where it goes when we're shooting one-handed. Now, they say that this hand over here is the guide hand. We never, ever talk about that as being a guide hand because it tends to screw up more shots than it helps. And so this is we refer to this as the assist hand. And the assist hand wants to disconnect as we're finishing the shot. Now, when you're shooting one hand, you'll want to have the thumb spread so that we have enough room to get our finger between the ball and the palm of your hand. That allows us to grip the basketball with those two fingers. We have better control than if we just have the thumb laying on the side of the basketball. Okay, and so that's real important. But the most important thing on the one-handed shooting is just focusing on those elements, making sure that the wrist comes through soft, making sure that the ball comes off fingers 1 and 2, making sure that we elevate and finish with our elbow higher than our eye. And now let me go on for a second. I was watching a video just a day or two ago about Dennis Stanton. He was putting the video on, and it was and he does a lot of work with the pros too, I think, doesn't he?
No, I mean, Dennis is more, he does a lot of work with younger players and stuff, but I mean, he is a high level basketball shooting mind.
Yes, and one of the things that he was demonstrating is a one-handed shot. And what we talk about on the one-handed shot is we usually want to start in the middle of the floor, in the middle of the lane, at about 10 feet. And what we're going to do there is just work on just those mechanics over and over and over. And I was reading an article the other day where this one coach, it might have been Dennis even, who was talking about as just kind of a warm-up, you do that and you've got to make 25 points or 25 shots before you go on to anything else. What you're doing there is you're really emphasizing the elements of the shot that are going to make it be an improved number for you in the future. And then the other elements come to kind of come together. Getting your legs into it is another one. Okay.
But you know, the real difference between who becomes a great shooter and who just kind of remains mediocre are the ones that actually do that stuff.
Yep, they are.
Because you know, sometimes people come in and they just do that when they're working with a coach or at a camp or something like that, and then they go off by themselves. They don't do any of that stuff.
Well,
and you know, the people that actually get better and do well, they aren't the ones that are going one-handed shots. I mean, why would I spend my time doing that? Or you know, I'm just going to go out here and I'm going to shoot a bunch of these shots here or shoot around, or that stuff doesn't get it done.
Well, you know, that's an interesting comment, because one of the things that we tell our players at the end of every session is that you need to take and spend at least 20 to 30 minutes every day, if you can, just working on form shooting, where you're actually coaching yourself up. One of the things that we coach, and I hope this is right, I know it is right, and that is that when we're talking to somebody about doing a particular mechanic on the shot, we're going to tell you why that works, and it'll make sense. Okay, and a lot of times you're not hearing that from people. I know I never did as a young guy. People would tell me to focus on the back rim, snap your wrist, square up, and all of that kind of stuff. I had no idea what it meant or what effect it would have on the basketball. But what we do is we try to teach people, okay, if you do this, this is going to be the result. If you do something else, that result is over there for you too. And what you want to do is focus on the things that are going to make your shot more pure, and pretty soon you'll be surprised at how soon you start dropping it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that comes down to kind of our other philosophy is that you should be your own best coach. You shouldn't just do what people tell you to do. You should literally evaluate that. Does that make sense to me? If it doesn't, maybe get more clarification or think about it yourself. You know, when you're working on developing who you are as a player, I mean, you should always be considering these things and using your critical thinking. If you're just the type of person that just listens to what people say and you just do that, I mean, I don't think that that's really setting you up for, you know, developing as a better and better player. Like if you're always evaluating yourself, you're going to be able to be critical and find those little places to polish up. Whereas if you're not, I mean, you just kind of are just going through the motions.
Sure. I don't think it hurts at all either to have somebody take and video your shot from the back and the front and from both sides, and just checking to see what your mechanics look like when you shoot. And you can, in fact, we do this when we're instructing players, is that we'll video them for a couple of minutes on what they're doing. Then we'll bring them over and we'll show them exactly what it is that they're doing that we don't think is the right thing to do. And that helps them to understand better, too, of what you need to get done. Sometimes just the verbal part of it doesn't come through as clearly as, oh, yeah, I can see that now.
Well, and, you know, here's the other thing, too. And, you know, I just lost it. Never mind. It was right there. I was listening to what you were saying. And,
Okay.
it'll come to me again. But let's move on. Let's ask another question.
We've beat that one to death.
Yeah. Oh, man, it was good, too.
Okay, it'll come back.
Gurlal Sidhu says, what vertical exercises should I do? I'm really close to touching the rim. Well, if you want to check out our vertical jump series on our YouTube page, you can check that out. And we also have the vertical jump handbook and also vertical jump training stuff on our shotscience.com website. So, I mean, we have a ton of stuff there. I think one of the things that we focus on what we put together is more body weight related stuff, or at least progressing up to adding weights and stuff. A lot of times people just, they do these really intense programs that jump right into doing these complex compound movements with weights, which is not really very safe.
Well,
And
yeah.
you also are skipping out a lot of the foundation building in terms of stability and mobility and things like flexibility, which are also very important. I mean, one of the big things that people are surprised by is this initial kind of return that you get from the added flexibility. If you just work on developing your flexibility, that can almost give you this huge resource of power for your verticals. Yeah. So I would check that out first if I was you. Just check out all of our vertical stuff.
What was the address of the other one? Shotscience.com, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
JD says, "Why do I shoot the ball too hard?"
Okay. All right. We have no idea, but we got some guesses that I think probably would be pretty close to it. One of the things that we forget about is the fact that the arms and shoulders and the hands are the guidance system. In other words, they guide the ball where you want it to go. Oftentimes what happens when we shoot the ball hard is that we are trying to get more power for our shot, and so we get it here with the arm and the shoulder trying to get it up there with that power, but that screws up accuracy. And so probably the best thing to do on this is to get yourself at a shorter distance and make sure that you are using what we call a one-part shot. A one-part shot is one that starts at the bottom of your feet and it comes through your legs, your core muscle group, and ends up at the end of your fingers. That's a one-part shot.
One motion shot.
Yeah, a one motion or one-part shot. And then there is the two-part shot. And this is the one that usually causes that hard shot. Is we come up with the legs and there's a slight pause, and then we realize that we don't have enough power, and we try to give it more power with the arms. And so guidance goes in the bucket, and we're shooting bricks. And so if you just take and work on having a nice smooth relaxation, and get the legs to full extension.
Well, it's what you call connectivity. It's connecting your feet to the follow through.
Yep.
And anytime you have a sticking point or a stopping point in your motion, you have killed your power.
Yes.
And so one of the things that we talk about is kind of the separation of your lower body and your upper body. Your lower body should really be the powerhouse, the jet propulsion for your vertical into the air before you shoot. The brute force.
Well, it's because that's where the largest muscles in your body are, too.
That, and the other part is that your upper body, where your arms are, that is the delivery system.
Yep.
You don't want to be trying to brute force your delivery system. You want to really work on that being very accurate and kind of having a very delicate, precise release.
Yep, exactly.
So if you're trying to power through with precision on that release, you're not going to get it. So you really need to work on connecting everything from the feet all the way up.
Yep.
I remember what I was going to say, and that is that in today you have so much more ability to evaluate your own shooting than any generation before, because most everybody or their parents has one of these, has a phone that has a camera, that has video, that has slow motion replay.
Yeah.
So you can you can film yourself on this, and you can look at your shooting, and you can evaluate yourself. You can even slow it down so that it is super slow-mo, and you can see exactly what you're doing. So there is really no excuse to have some funky mechanic if you can just sit there and look at what you're doing, right?
Well, let's just give them a reference too. If you go to our YouTube channel, and I think all of our shooting videos are in a playlist there, right?
I'm sure, yeah.
Okay, and you just take a look at some of the things that we're talking about there and what the effect of these different things are that are important for your shooting. That would be a great place to start.
All right, Justin Wright says, "Hey, do you think it's possible to get a scholarship in junior or senior year?" Well,
senior year, certainly. There's a couple of local girls that we know that one of them, she's a pretty good player, and she has received a scholarship to a four-year school. And so I think it's possible that you can get that. Coaches oftentimes...
Is she a junior or a senior?
She was a junior.
Yeah.
And coaches oftentimes on the college level will do this. They will try and get people kind of on the hook. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but they kind of get them on the hook because they'd like to have them. But at the same time, they're looking over here. What about that one? What about that one over there? And then what happens is that they may lose interest in you because they think this player over here might be a little better than you are. Maybe they're bigger and better. And so it's possible to get scholarships when you're a junior, but I wouldn't count on it. I think that's kind of an unusual situation. I've even heard there's one young lady that we know, and she's a freshman in high school, and she's getting offers to play at different colleges. That's not typical, though, believe me.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that you can get a scholarship and it can be a disaster because there's plenty of people that I know that got Division I scholarships and they didn't do anything that first year. They were done.
Yep.
So
they found somebody else who could come in and do what they thought you could do.
Yeah, but the other thing too is that so many people put so much emphasis on getting these athletic scholarships and they're great when you can get them. You have to realize that at the different levels, they give out different amounts of scholarship. We don't need to go through that, but it's a handful at most, even at the top. But if you're able to get an academic scholarship, there is tons more of those than there is athletic scholarships, and you can still play sports on an academic scholarship.
Sure.
So if you're wanting to pay for college or get an academic scholarship first.
Yep.
I mean it's so much easier than trying to get at least the field is a lot more wide open than it is for athletic.
And here's a little side note: is that Division III basketball in this country is a very high level of basketball, but they can't offer scholarships. They offer grant and aids and things like that to help you get through it, but it's not a scholarship situation. But the caliber of basketball is really, really good. You don't find a lot of 6'10" people playing there, but just the basketball itself is high quality.
Denby Star gets back to us and says, so basically my right elbow should be on the same line as my right eye and those two fingers, right?
Yep.
Because what happens is I really tend to stick out my elbow, which apparently leads to the ball coming off the wrong finger.
Okay,
yeah,
that's it.
If your elbow is out, let me get in here. If your elbow is straight up and down, you're going to come up and it's going to be a release up high, and it's going to give the ball more lift, and you're going to get the right finish. If your elbow is out, you're going to basically be shoving the ball, and it's also going to cause your hand to come out like that, pronated, and it's going to come off the wrong fingers. I mean, the elbow really does influence a lot of those things.
Yeah, very true.
Okay, Bulldog says, I think positionless basketball has been taken too far with youth. Example, all five outside three-point line most of the game.
Yeah.
Bigs can post up and guards can drive and dish can give confidence. Thoughts? Well, that's taking it to an extreme. That's of course, we're not rubber stamping just everybody shooting three-pointers. You shoot your range. That's what you do.
Exactly. And that probably is a major mistake that maybe youth coaches make too, and even AAU coaches make, is that they take and have an offense where maybe they've got people shooting threes and they're not really effective three shooters. I had a young student yesterday and I said, how many threes do you think that, what percentage of threes do you think that you should make if you were to take and shoot 100 shots? And and it was a young girl, and she's been around a little bit, and she said probably 50%. Not even close. Not even close. When you're shooting the three line, you don't even find anybody in the NBA that's shooting that high. You might find somebody that is a 42 or 43%.
Are you talking about percentage?
Percentage rise, yeah. And the actual situation is something like this. If you are probably a girl or a boy, sometimes a girl shoot better than the guys do too, is that you find you're going to be somewhere between 37 and 40% for the really good shooters.
Yeah, if you're like top level.
Exactly. And so what you're going to find there, that you're going to miss 60 shots out of 100. And so that doesn't make much sense to just rely on that.
And we're talking about competitive percentages, not just shoot around percentages.
Exactly.
And the other thing too is that a lot of times, and this happens a lot, I think, in the youth leagues, is where these youth league coaches, they try to apply the stuff that they see in the pros to these kids that are 8, 9, 10 years old, and it's just, it's silly. I mean, that's not how you get things done. And like we said, you should be shooting within your range. most kids that are that age should not even be anywhere near the 3-point
Yeah,
line. I mean,
right.
they probably shouldn't even have it in the lower levels. But, and then a lot of kids watch TV and they see Steph Curry or Clay or, fill in the blank great shooter, and they think that that's how they should be shooting, the 35 footer. But it's like, they're not a professional body, they haven't put in the work and all that. So I see what you're saying about positionless basketball has been taken too far. It really shouldn't just be positionless basketball applied to that. You should be an all-around basketball player, regardless of who you are. But you also have to put in the work to develop that. You don't just walk out on the floor and just say, I'm positionless.
Okay, well, that brings up another point I think is kind of a valid one as well, because we've experienced some of this over the years, Casey, is that oftentimes the people who are coaching youth basketball are they're not really coaches. Maybe they've played a lot of basketball and they're pretty good, but then they start coaching basketball and they forget that the people that we're working with in a youth league, they can't dribble very well, they can't shoot very well, they can't defend very well because they don't know enough.
Yeah.
And so our pitch, and Casey go back and tell you this because when he was playing, this is how we approached it, is that we try to teach them how to play basketball, first of all, how to move, what to do with your feet, how to shoot the basketball from a shorter range, and just teaching them
How to play.
how to play, how to set a screen, how to come off of a screen. And it's surprising after a while they began to experiment themselves with some of these techniques that they have learned. And that's where I think you learn how to shoot or learn how to play basketball, is when you've got those basic elements, movement, shooting, understanding what's going on, screens, all of that. And you don't have to go any deeper than that.
Right. But, what you don't want to apply to kids early is that these positions are set in stone,
Yeah.
so that somebody grows up thinking, oh, well, I'm a post player. I mean,
We had one of those last season, and it was
and a lot of people use that as an out too. It's like, oh, I only have to work on this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just relate this story a little bit.
Hurry, quick.
Okay, and so this particular player was a sophomore and had played the year before and considered themselves to be a shooting guard. But we had two people who were better at the shooting guard, and so we're trying to find a place where we can fit her in, and so we ended up playing her at the post. And so she went to her parents and said, they're not treating me right, and I'm a shooting guard. And so we had this little meeting, and the upshot of it is that it is not her place or her parents' place to determine where she's going to play on a basketball team. And that happens more and more today in youth basketball, in high school basketball, where parents get too much involved, or people, even players, think that they know more than the coach does. Okay, that's enough of that rant.
Yeah, getting into real rant territory.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Bulldog says, you think it's healthier for youth to play multiple sports? A lot out there lately about stress on body, just playing one sport year round. Yeah. If you're a kid, you should not be just playing one thing.
Yep, absolutely.
And you should be doing all the different things.
Yeah. It's better on your body. It's better mentally for you.
You have these kids that all they do is basketball from 4 years old on, and they burn out by the time they get to be any significant age where it becomes competitive. I mean, it's
well. There's another element that has kind of shown up, and I think he's making a comment related to that, and that is, you are wearing your body out by playing a sport. I would be willing to bet you there are more ACL injuries, ankle injuries, hip injuries in basketball when players get to be high school and college players than I can ever remember when I was a kid. Not that I got hurt or anything, but I sprained ankle here or there. But they just feel like there's been so much focus on individual sports that people just play that all the time, and they're wearing out their body. Yeah. These are young people, and they're wearing out their body.
And also, the more different things that you play, the more that informs the sports that you stick with or focus on. So, you watch all these, especially like these foreign players from, the last few decades, like Hakeem Olajuwon or Steve Nash or these people that are kind of associated with soccer. I think Joel Embiid even, but like they have all these footwork skills that definitely lend to playing basketball, and they have applied that to probably making them a better basketball player. So if you're just playing basketball, you've never done anything in terms of soccer, or you've never done anything in terms of, maybe if you played baseball, you'd have better hand-eye coordination or whatever, just play everything and try everything.
You bring up a point there that I really kind of think not enough is said about, and that is basketball. In fact, every sport where you're running or jumping or whatnot has to do with how you use your feet. And so one of the things that we try to do when we're working with students, training students, is we work an awful lot on how to use your feet. Because oftentimes we don't use them very well and we're not very effective. And so just by learning, okay, this particular move, this requires this kind of a foot pattern that to be effective. And if you use this one over here, it's not going to be effective.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Andre Sims asks, what makes a shot softer? That comes down to your release, really.
Yeah, it does. And I'm going to back up just a little bit. From the time I was a young guy, I didn't really touch a basketball much until I was 12 or 13 years old. And I think probably it just wasn't a very prevalent kind of sport in the town that I was growing up in, which was out in the sticks in a little northern Arizona town. And then when I got into junior high school, I didn't make a team until I was a sophomore in high school. And mostly because I didn't know what I was doing, and I hadn't really relied on anybody to kind of help me out. So where was I going with all of that?
What makes a softer shot?
Oh, yeah, okay. And so when I started coaching, I realized, hey, I don't know how to teach people how to shoot. So I started investigating it, and I'm going to make this long story shorter.
This was before there was YouTube. This was way before there was any VHS tapes that taught any. This is like, if you were able to read it in a book, you had really had to search for it. And I had a club over my shoulder. It was that long ago. Yeah. Okay, but the upshot of it is this. There was one of the things that I heard from coaches through high school, and that is when you shoot the ball, you want to snap your wrist. And that means that when you get to the end of it, you're having a very brisk follow through. And what happens there is that the ball tends to spin faster. Yep.
And the faster it spins, what happens is that there's more energy captured in that basketball rotation than you want. And what happens is that when it runs into the rim, which it does more often than it does just go right through the net, it hits and it wants to expend that energy. And so what happens is that ends up being either a real high or a long rebound, meaning it pitches out. What we discovered, and it's been 20, 25 years ago, maybe longer than that, is that when you have a relaxed wrist, and we call this the floppy wrist, like this, and you are still having the same shooting power, but your wrist is very relaxed.
Yep.
What happens is the ball tends to spin slower.
Yep.
You watch Curry's shot in slow motion.
It's like a tumble.
Yeah, and it just it turns very slow, and so what happens when it hits the basket, it tends, and especially with nice arc, it tends to stay around the basket. When you're snapping the wrist and it hits that rim, it's usually going to be a reaction where it's longer or it's taller and longer away from the basket.
Yeah,
and I like the idea of you putting the one up there that's nice and soft. And in fact, this is the greatest picture of this at all. If you go back and watch Kawhi Leonard's final shot against Philadelphia, where he takes and does a jump shot on the corner, and he normally shoots with a flat shot. What he did is he had a nice arc trying to get it over Embiid's hand, which he did. And so it had this tall arc, and when it came down, it lit on the near rim and bounded straight up because of the nice arc, and it came down and hit one more time, and then it kicked over to the opposite rim, and it hit once, twice, and then ended up in the bucket. Now, the reason that happened is because you watch the rotation and the ball is spinning very slow.
Yep. And you can do an experiment too. If you go to a basket and you have a basketball, just get it real close to the basket, throw it up underhand, and spin it as hard as you can. Watch how the ball just goes flying off the backboard or the rim that it hits. And then you can try it. Just do it with a gentle backspin, and you'll find that it really just changes the trajectory of the ball so that it stays basically where it is, because it's in opposition of the way that it's falling.
Right.
So it will make it stay right where it is or bound up instead of just flying off. I mean, you have to really work to soften up your wrist, because a lot of people do that where they do the snap or the flick and it's just, and you can see it, and it's like their arm, you can feel their arm, and it's just like
really
tensed muscle. It should really be a flop where your fingers are so flopped and relaxed. And if you watch, I mean, I remember when I was a kid and they were showing Michael Jordan highlights, and it was him in slow motion, and they would show him shoot that shot, and his fingers would go wow, wow, wow at the end because he had that floppy release.
Yeah.
The same is true now if you watch Steph Curry or any of these shooters that are, consistently shooting these, high arcing, soft shots. They're doing the same thing where there's a flop, and it's not a snap. I mean, there's people that do that too, but it doesn't work the same. It's like they have this flop, and their fingers are fluttering at the end. So you really want to work on that, because it also just loosens up all this musculature, and so that is translated to less energy put into the ball. You don't want the ball to just be just this bomb of energy when it hits the rim. You want it to be really soft and gentle.
All right, now let me recap that, and we can move on. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll find that there is a section on shooting there on the wrist follow through.
Yep. Okay, we're going to do one more question here real quick, and then we're going to ask you guys a question. But this one comes from Neil Rearup. He says, is there anything to consider for players when they are a sophomore on the varsity team?
Anything to consider? Well, yeah, there is. There's some things that can create problems if you're a sophomore on the varsity. Sometimes you don't get to play very much. And not playing very much is really kind of frustrating, and it doesn't help you develop your skills all that much, even though you get a chance to take and play with varsity level players at varsity level speed every day. That probably is the biggest thing that you can get out of it, is just adapting to that increased speed, increased physicality, all of that kind of stuff. The only time that I would probably, and I've over my years in coaching, which is quite a few of them now, I've probably had maybe 5 or 6 sophomores that were major contributors. I never tried to carry a sophomore on the varsity unless I was short of manpower. Maybe I was, I only had 8 players. Maybe I'd take 2 sophomores up, but I made sure they got a chance to play. And the reason for that is getting a chance to play means that you develop all of those other things that we were just talking about: your confidence, your physicality, your speed, all of that kind of thing. Sometimes coaches are caught in disregard. This last year, when we were coaching, we had to take 2 freshmen with us because we had 7 players that were upperclassmen. There were a couple of sophomores and maybe 4 seniors, and so the upshot of it is that that's something that we had to do because we didn't have enough players to coach. We ended up playing in several games at the end of the season where we're playing for the championship, and we've got only 6 players that are able to go ahead and play because, and 2 of them were freshmen.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those people that did play varsity as a sophomore, and I will say that what you can do in terms of the way you play is just play hard, do all the little things. If you go watch our video on like how to be a leader or something like that, I can't remember what it's even called, but do all those little things that will earn you respect. Right. One thing you will find, the older upperclassmen players will give you crap. They will test you. Yeah. They will bully you. Yeah. They will haze you. I mean, that happens. And, a lot of that is because whether it's just jealousy or that's the culture and, like they feel like they can get away with it. Uh-huh. You can't take it personal. You got to just keep, positive about that kind of stuff. And, you know, if you start to have some success and that kind of looms over them, they're going to take it out on you again, because that's just how it is. You don't want to be the senior who is getting showed up by the sophomore. You also have to remember that those guys in those 2 years between when you're a sophomore and a senior, you can change a lot physically, where, you know, they're going to be a lot more physical than you are. So it's good to have good skill development in terms of that. You don't want to be bullying some guy that's, you know, an 18-year-old when you're 15 or 16 years old. So you will get a lot of blowback, but you just, you know, you can't let that hold you down. A lot of people do, because they're like, oh, they're bullying. Deal with it. And like, if you don't want to be there, then okay, then don't be there. But it's going to be how it's going to be.
Right. Just a couple of quick, and then we should hit a couple more of those before we go away. Okay. When I was coaching, maybe 25 years ago, maybe it was longer than that.
Had to be more than that.
Okay. We had a boys team where we actually had 4 sophomores on the team, but it was a young team. And we had maybe 2 or 3 seniors, and then the rest were juniors. And what happened is that those sophomores, by the time we got to mid-season, they were playing better than everybody else. And so they kind of took over the show. One of those ended up being probably one of the best players in our league, and for the next couple of years, the same thing. And so you have those kind of anomalies happen as well. Let's hit a couple more of these before we go away.
Well, I mean, it's just people saying, good job, looking forward to the new studio from Bulldogs. Andre Sim says, such a great shot to use in an example. I think he's talking about that Kawhi ones, and he says, thank you. And then Denby Sar says, thank you so much for the great answer. Cool.
All right. Well, we're glad that we can offer some things that hopefully will help you in maybe becoming better or better understanding some of the things we talk about. This has been an accumulation of information and whatnot that goes back 6 decades, something like that.
For you.
For me, not for Casey, but for me. And the thing that is really cool is that we can share a lot of that with people that are interested in what our thoughts on things might be. Now, we don't consider ourselves to be pros.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have spent a lot of time developing all of these concepts. We've worked with people at all levels of basketball. We've been all over to talk about it and teach it. And, you know, we've seen the results and stuff too. And so we want to make sure that when we are telling you guys all the stuff that we are teaching you, it's from our experience, and it's also backed up with kind of the results that we've gotten too. And we just want to not just spoon feed that to you. We want to show it to you so that you guys can evaluate it and also become your own best coach too. So hopefully that is kind of how we come across when you watch our tutorials and things like that too. So stay tuned for more tutorial stuff. Remember to let us know. The question of the day is, let us know where you guys are from. And the second question of the day is, and leave that in the comments, is what are you going to do today or tomorrow, if it's already too late, to work on your shot, to develop your shot. And let us know about that. And hopefully our methods for getting the ball in your hands were helpful too. Make sure you check out our social media stuff. We are on everything. We're Shot Science on all that stuff, and check out shotscience.com. If you want to wear and rep some of our merchandise stuff, you can get our shirts. You can also ask us about the hats, and if we get enough people that want hats, we'll make hats too. And the vertical jump training stuff is also on our website, the vertical jump box. So check that out, and we will see you guys hopefully soon.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right. We'll see you later. Bye.